Okay, here we go with day 2 of section 4.7. In the last video, we learned what slope-intercept form is and how to get an equation in slope-intercept form. And so today we're actually going to use that to create a graph of a line. And it's actually a pretty simple method once you get the hang of it. So the steps for this are, first we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form, if it's not already, and we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept, so just like we did in the previous video. The next thing we're going to do is plot the y-intercept, and we'll look at what that looks like. Third step is we're going to use our slope, which is just rise over run, to find the next point on the line, and then we're going to draw a line through the 2 points. So we'll kind of refer back to those steps as we do each of these problems. So here's my first equation. It's y equals negative 4x. And now this may not look like our slope-intercept form. Remember, our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right, where m is our slope. Whoops, not x. M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. So it looks like maybe that b is missing. But keep in mind, right, if I do plus 0, it just happens that in this case, our y-intercept or our b is 0. So for this example, my m is negative 4. It's the number in front of the x. And my y-intercept is 0. Remember that y-intercept just tells us where the line is going to cross the y-axis. So if our y-intercept is 0, it means I just cross here, which happens to be the origin. So we're going to always start here. And so a lot of times what I'll tell students is that when we're graphing, we begin with the b value, with our y-intercept. So now I've plotted my y-intercept. Our next step is to use slope, which is rise over run. Now, our slope here is negative 4, which I know is the same as negative 4 over 1. So in this case, my rise is negative 4, so really I'm going to go down. And my run is a positive 1, so I'm going to go to the right. So from my y-intercept, I'm starting at the y-intercept, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over to the right 1. So now I have 2 points, and I'm going to use my straight edge to connect those points. And now I've got a good graph of the line. And I like to go back and check. So this line to me looks like it's going downhill. So I would expect it to have a negative slope. Looking back at my slope, it is a negative number, so I know that slope is correct. So let's look at another example. Part B is y equals 2/3 x. Again, we can treat this like 2/3 x plus 0. So our slope is 2 over 3. And our y-intercept, again, is 0. Again, we're treating that slope. That's our rise. This case, my rise is positive, so I'm going to be going up. My run is also positive, so I'm going to the right. So my line crosses the y-axis, where y is 0. So again, I'm going through the origin. From that point, I'm going to go up 2 and over 3. And plot my point and connect those points to make my line. Again, I'm always using my straight edge so it's nice and straight, and then I'm putting arrows on either end to show that goes on forever. Okay, so let's skip the next one, and I want to look at some equations that look a little bit different. Okay, these next set maybe look a little more like our y equals mx plus b, because I actually have a value for b that's not 0. So in this example, my m is a negative 1/3, and my b is 4. Remember, we always begin with our b value. So this is telling me my y-intercept, the point where I cross the y-axis, is 4. So I'm going to go along my y-axis and find 4 and plot a point. Now, starting from the y-intercept, when we do this, we're always starting from the y-intercept. I'm going to use my slope. My slope was -1 over 3. So my rise is going to be a -1. I'm going to go down 1, and then I'm going to go to the right 3. That helps me locate that second point, and I can draw my line through those points. Oops, went over to my other graph here. All right, for part B. Now, again, we have to remember that this is really a 1 in front of our x. So in this case, my m is a 1, which if I think of it rise over run, that's just the same as 1 over 1. My b is a +2, so I'm going to begin at the y-intercept, which is a +2. So from the origin, I go up 2. Now, from that origin, from the y-intercept, I'm going to use rise over run to find the next point. So my rise is a +1, my run is a +1, and that gives me another point on the graph. All right, now the last one I do want to go over. There's just one small difference here. Again, I'm already in slope-intercept form, so I can quickly pick out that my b is a -3/4. Now, in this case, my b is also a negative, so that's a -2. So I just have to be careful when I graph that when I find that y-intercept, I go down 2. Then from there, I treat it like every other problem. I'm going to go down 3, and then to the right 4. And that gives me my 2 points on my graph. All right, so let's go ahead and check out the next page. The only difference here is that now my equations aren't quite in slope-intercept form yet. So we have to do some work to get them in slope-intercept form. But we've already had lots of practice with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is move over my 3x. Which means these are going to cancel. I get 4y. And that's going to be equal to my -3x. And I have a negative or -4. So now I have one step left to get y by itself. I divide everything by 4. So I get y equals, again, I'm going to leave this as a fraction because we want to use it as rise over run. So I have -3 over 4 times x. And then a -4 divided by 4 is a -1. So my slope is going to be -3/4, and my y-intercept is -1. So then we just treat that the same. We begin with our b. I'm going to start at my y-intercept is -1, and from there I'm going to use my slope. I'm going to go down 3 because I have a negative rise, and to the right 4 because I have a positive run. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and this is a little hard to see, but it should be about right there. And again, there's the graph of my line. Okay, we'll just do one of those since you've had plenty of practice with putting that into slope-intercept form. And I want to look at this last group of problems here. Sometimes we'll be given a point and we'll be asked to graph a line that goes through a given point and has a given slope. So this is actually a lot more straightforward. We don't have to worry about picking out our slope and our y-intercept. We can just use what we're given. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the point that's given to me. So in this case, I have negative 3, 2. So from the origin, I'm going to go to the left 3 and up 2 and plot that point. Now, from there, we're just going to use slope like we did before. Now, since my slope is negative 1, that's the same as negative 1 over 1. So again, negative means down 1 and then over to the right 1. So from that point, I'm going to go down 1 and over 1 and draw my line. And that's all we need to do. Now I have a line that goes through this point and has the slope of negative 1. So we'll just go ahead and do the last one. So the first thing again is to plot the point. So I'm just going to make a note here to step 1 is to plot the point. So I have 3, right 3 and down 4. 3, negative 4 is my point. And then for step 2, so starting from the point, oops, I'm about to go off. Let me move this over. Starting from the point, use rise over run to find a second point. And then step 3, we're going to draw a line through the 2 points. Sorry, I'm kind of cramming this in here. Just draw a line through those points. So we already did step 1. We plotted our point. Now in this case, our slope is 3, which is the same as 3 over 1. So I'm going to rise 3 and run 1. So I'm going 1 to the right. And again, there we have our line. So now we've got several methods for graphing lines. There's just one section left, and then we are through with Chapter 4. You'll get some practice with doing this graphing in your homework coming up. Good luck.